Hello everyone, Blue Star Saber here once again to do One Piece chapter 1168, which is my second attempt because I did an error in the first one that I decided to restart. But as you can probably see, there's been a few changes, particularly my avatar cover featuring, let's see, the straw hats from the Alabasta group, and Loki in there, of course, get up for Elbaf. I've basically done a few changes since I can't really access all the images I want to for the chapter review right now. So I figured, so I've only limited myself to like the cover and whatever pages I could find, which to be fair is only one other page, so which I only use in the forts. So yeah, I'm doing some bit of changes, and I figured might as well change the avatar to Ritzy, talk about let's see the upcoming arc will be of One Piece. So yeah. Anyway, chapter 1168, where this chapter follows the aftermath of the last chapter. Let's see, where we see that Howard is being trying to become a God's Knight, where he's been doing actives and duties for the world government, taking out pirates, if you will, and it's been given the rank of God Steel, which is just below the rank of God's Knight, where they get a marking, which associates but not a full-on member. As we also see that apparently Shanks has also become a member, and it's granted, as many probably are suspecting, he is probably doing it as a facade in order to get some information that he needs, given away how he's behaving like a standard world noble, at the very least. While this is going on, we learn that Ida has become ill, and Ritzy Loki finds out that it's actually his Ritzy family on his mother's side that poisoned her in order to try and prevent her from becoming Ritzy Elbaf's queen, if you will, which, of course, Loki, in his rage, Ritzy beats them up, maybe kills some of them, and burns their village down, because he declares that Ida is the one mother that he actually has. So showing that he does actually, despite all the talk or the attitude towards Ida we've seen in the flashback, he really does like his mother. He really does care for her as a mother. Now, what will Ida's fate be? What will happen with, let's see, Howard's journey to become a God's Knight? Well, we're probably going to find out in this chapter, and maybe what else happens to Shanks. So yeah. But before we begin, of course, I will give my thoughts on the One Piece cover, which this time we have reader request, A Family of Sheep Knitting Hachan Six Gloves by Mrs. Fuji, which it seems that Hachi has done with using his hands, has been doing some snow work for them. The sheep family giving him gloves in order to make sure his hands don't freeze while doing the work, with a bit of a thank you bag. Honestly, it's kind of nice, and I can see Hachi doing something like this for a group of sheep, since I'm remember rereading some of let's see Alabastas, and you got some of the Hachi cover story where he did some helpful things to like certain people. So yeah, nice little cover there. Anyway, the chapter begins with the same year, 15 years ago, around the world. We're seeing members of the public talking about how those giants that have joined the Navy have played a critical role in defeating pirates, if you will. And with some now changing their opinions, thinking more positive about them. You even see chefs talking, citizens talking, like particularly chefs talking about the food they get from Elbaf, and even I think we see that shipping guy from the underworld. I've forgotten his name, but he's basically got Elbaf's quality of wood, so they're making ships. So yeah, it seems like showing that whatever Howard has done, it seems it's made progress to actually advance Elbaf and Giants' relations with humans in the world at large. So yeah, at the moment you're seeing you are seeing progress. So yeah. Anyway, we cut to Elbaf, where Howard is talking about his dream of being part of the world government coming true, and that they should build a crew, and he wants to build a cruise ship so giants can travel all over the world. The people celebrate this, and let's see, as he's talking about how even though they're a minority, there are so many different people and countries and cultures. Let's see, they're hoping to at least make more friends. As you see the citizens getting excited, as Howard says that we're almost there to this bright future, with one giant even commenting that it seems like the warrior business seems to be dead, at least for Elbaf, as Howard is thinking he'll see it through to Ida. We then cut to like the Walrus Screw, where you see a bunch of the giant kids playing, seemingly some sort of volleyball, if I had to guess, at least some sort of ball game, where Howard's talking and thanking Saul that let's see, due to the fact that he's helping kids educate, where he comments as, I suppose it is more healthier than swinging swords. With Saul also telling how, don't you think it's a bit let's see, shouldn't you be worried about losing your way, about what you're losing your way and all that stuff? With Howard talking about how he no longer thinks the military might is their national strength, as Howard talks about, Ada taught me everything he knew, and the fact that he met her is probably his lifelong treasure, as we actually see a tombstone of Ida showing that she's actually dead. But we then cut to a flashback, which I will admit I didn't really notice this tombstone at first, but you see the conversation. Let's see, where Howard and Ida, let's see, is on her deathbed, which will admit, if you miss that tombstone bit, you would not realize that this is the deathbed, if you will. Let's see. This it seems like a normal conversation with Ida talking about how Howard's changed since the first time he has met. Let's see but she is admit that Howard has changed the country for the better. Talking about how children are studying, everyone's laughing, being bright. It's a completely different country. With him saying the old practices, strange customs, they've thrown them all out. They're all bad ones. But Ada points out that she does like some aspects, like the warrior's pride, thinking it's cool, saying that there are some aspects of your culture you should cherish, which he says. But he tries to protest, saying, no, due to those cultures, I'm not allowed to really marry you. And he's never really gone over that. But Ida just laughs it off, saying, let's see, you told me you wanted to make him a true wife and all that stuff, but thinking that's sweet, you're thinking he's a big sweetie. But asks, what about Loki? And if I'm going like, he'll be Hadrulin's little brother, how's that? But I just been like, that's always what Loki, that's always what Loki has been and all that stuff, with her going like, let's see, with her saying that just hearing all that from you keeps me fed for months, but she doesn't really mind, as you're everyone's king, not just hers. With her talking about, we're almost there, aren't we? With him going like, that's right, very soon. And it'll be connected to the rest of the world. And there'll be millions of more times larger than before. And we'll do what we used to, as he thinks back to the time of traveling, if you will. With Ida saying, that sounds fantastic, I can't wait. As Howard says, neither can I. But unfortunately, as Ida's grabbed his hand, she then falls off, signifying that she is now dead. And as you see Harold walk in, you see Hadrulin and the new giant pirates running in, and as well as I think that giant, I think her name was Mako. Hold on, let me just Giant One Piece. I'm just gonna quickly just get that page just so I can double check the name of that one character. Wait, hold on. Yeah, Mato. Yeah, we see Mato, as you see who is being basically Ida's, let's see, assistant. You see, and I think you also see a little bit of Road in the corner there, but basically you got Hadrulin and Mato crying and weeping hard because he's lost his mother, and Mato because she's basically lost her either mentor / mother figure, if you will. And now she's basically taking over the bar, as we see in the current timeline with One Piece, where you see Howard covering his eyes, grieving. And Loki, we learn that he's been in a prison cell, arguably because due to his actions of destroying a village, which arguably we probably know he's justified in doing so. Probably argue his anger was justified in doing so when they seemingly take the life of his mother figure. But of course, it seems like Elbaf, like every country, even if you're trying to avenge your relatives, you're probably breaking some laws about harming people. So he's been thrown into jail. So, yeah. But as the snow falls down, you see Loki tilt his hat in the sort of mourning for Ida. Anyway, the flashback then cuts to let's see, 14 years ago in the Holy Land, where Shanks has apparently gone missing, and they talk about how apparently once his current mission was complete, let's see, he was going to be made track to become a full-on knight. But the five elders decide they'll use his backup as a means to have a golden opportunity, asking Harold if he will take it. Since Shanks is no longer around, he's next in line to become a holy knight, with him saying that he would want to join the Knights of Guards if it means that Elbaf is allowed to join the government, with the others saying, "Congratulations, the Great One trusts you," and talking about how it's been a very long haul, and now that will be known as the king who changed Elbaf's history forever, with Harold asking, saying that, talking about how actually he wants, on the day that Elbaf is entered the world government, he wants to abdicate the throne, basically step down, and have someone younger and pure deserves to be the new king. But the elders say, but I think actually, and when that happens, Mu comes in and says, that is for Mu to decide. And Emu, and Harold finally meets Emu, if you will, which shocks Harold, because it's like, why is someone sitting on the empty throne? As well, basically, he knows like the history of that throne. No one's not supposed to be sitting there. With Emu saying, "Come closer. I have been watching thee, Harold." And then we see that Harold has been given the full-on mark of the God's Knights. Granted, it seems like that page, when it was done, was not properly fully drawn, which is the first I think we've seen since the Kuma flashback, in which Ginny died and you see Bonnie and Kuma looking after Bonnie, which arguably for that chapter made it quite effective, but in terms of despair, but that was not how it was supposed to go. But anyway, Hal talks about the strength that he's been getting from this marking, thinking it's rippling through him, thinking it's frightening, and the five elders, which more of the lack of proper drawing, goes like, "And you are now immortal," saying it chills the spine, with one saying, I think Walker is saying it chills the spine, with the elders going on how he's even more of a monster than he is at this point, basically a weapon, with Emo saying that you are now in service of Mu. Talking about, as an undying knight, which surprises Harold. And he also has now the ability to create an abyss so that they will bind to us. And then, when Now has completed his final duty, they wish to, hold on. He's saying that Elbaf will be bound to them once you've completed this final task, which Harold is happy about, which he returns home to his people, celebrating for a toast, and they will be able to be welcome amongst the member nations of the government. The citizens are celebrating King Harold, but then we cut to his castle, where Harold asks what Emu said, with him saying, "Use the entire country to form an army of warriors, and now we'll build a giant fleet to rival the navy, and act for the benefit of the world. That is thy order." With Harold pleading, wait, hold on. He's been doing all this to help Elbaf escape the cycle of fighting, and he's always intended to allow those who wish to enlist into the navy to do so, but he doesn't want to do it like this. But the guards are confused, because they're wondering, like, who's he talking to in there, because they see no one, as far as they're aware of, no one's in there. But Emu, in a sort of, feels like sort of Rinnegan or Sharingan like eye thing, if you will, going like, "Thou saddest history would be atoned for, thou saddest would be a slave." But how he said, but only for himself. With Emu saying history is not so light that it can be shouldered by Lady alone, and telling Harold he can't speak Dirac, saying he cannot really disobey him, as we see Harold moving his legs on his, against his will. With Emu saying, those who have accepted the Depth's covenant are given immortality and strength, but they must obey my orders in return, and think that they will have his way. Emu says he will have his way with him, as Hal tries his best, seemingly trying to torture his arm, but he can't stop, realizing he's being controlled, and Elbaf will be the same with him, saying that they had never really realizing that they never had any intent of bringing us into the circle of the world, realizing that this is what the world government had planned all along. And then he calls his guards to arms, realizing that, well, they're basically turning into warriors, turning Elbaf into an army of slaves, with the guards confused by what His Majesty wants, and he orders them to bring them chains and bind him to that pillar he's currently holding on to, and also to call Chief Jowl and his sons, with one of the guards saying that Hadrudan's out at sea right now, and Loki's still in his cell for that thing he did, as Hal's trying to desperately hold on, think he cannot resist, with the guards asking what's the matter, with him just saying, just release Loki. And then we cut to the underworld holding cell, where a guard tells Loki he's freed, and that he's to report to the Orus castle immediately, as the king has called for him, which seems to surprise Loki. And then we cut to Giles' house, where he realizes he's saying the words urgently, saying just a moment, wondering what it could be. As the narration says, but for now, let us return to the story. On this day, where this was a terrible massacre inside the castle, and the most beloved ruler in the history of Elbaf, wise King Harold, perish, as we end with his portrait, signifying the end as we're finally reaching the point where we first saw the flashback start when Loki was beginning to tell his story, ending the chapter. Anyway, I guess it's now time for my overall views on the chapter, if you will. So I'm giving you my thoughts, if you will. First of all, I do like how we are seeing that after all the efforts that Harold has been putting in, even though I think many people have been saying, oh, Harold's a fool, he's naive, why is he doing this? Make Elbaf great again, that kind of all that kind of rhetoric. People thinking that, Harold's a fool for joining the world government, but we are seeing that Harold is actually doing some progress, at least for the world's public image of giants, at the very least, with his efforts to try and get giants to join the Navy, and the giants that from other countries that have joined the Navy, at the very least, their efforts in taking out pirates, they've shown to be very effective taking out pirates. Yes, we've seen those Navy guys get taken out by Whitebeard and Sabo and Luffy, characters that we know. One Piece characters that we know, but then again, those are top dogs. Each of the Luffy is a super rookie. Then Sabo, basically probably a Yonko commander, and Whitebeard and Yonko. But we mostly, when we ever see giants, they're taken out by top dogs. But for the average pirate, they probably get their butts whipped by these giants. So, So the giants have managed to do an effective display of their strength and helping people by taking out as many pirates as possible. And also that Elbaf, with their shipping, with food culture and shipping abilities with the Adam Treewood, have managed to also help people as well. So basically, that progress that Howard has tried to do to open to the world has done some progress. So it is at the very least, people's ritzy perceptions of the giants is starting to change. Now, granted, we don't know. I don't know if Loki becoming a criminal and all that stuff had damaged the giants' reputation or not. But at the moment, it seems we're seeing that progress is being made for the giants. That probably down the line in the current timeline, when arguably Luffy is able to bring the dawn, giants will be welcomed in with the rest of the world, besides the fishmen and other races. After all, the problem with the problem with giants is not that is while they might be a minority species, they are actually too powerful for humans to deal with, given how they ruled the New World for so long. But yeah, so it's nice to actually see sort of that progress, if you will, and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I do like how Howard is like just being like and I do like how Howard has managed to change the people of Elbaf over that. Let's see, even they're seemingly willing to accept getting rid of their warrior ways. But I do like how that conversation with like Howard and Sol, which I will admit, I would have liked to see a bit more of when Sol joined Elbaf, but I do like how Harold is like thanking him for helping with the build of education. But I do like how both Sol and then of course later Ida talk about how even though you've changed your culture for the better, your nation for the better, do you really want to give up everything about your culture? Which is always like, I guess, sort of an interesting question about, I guess you could say, is like, do you wish to progress and all that stuff and be more open with the world and have better relations, but at the same time, do you not want to lose too much of your own culture as a result of it, which of course leads to some very populist movements in the current day and age, if you will, which has some very consequential results for those that do it. But I do like how Harold, it seems like what Harold is doing is arguably probably the right thing for Elbaf, building better relations with humans and the world, better not see no longer having his people feared as monsters. But at the same time, it seems like it's showing that he's going a bit too extreme with that he risks losing parts of the culture of Elbaf that are probably worth keeping. It's like arguably you need some. Seems like he wants to give up the warrior way completely, but there's definitely some aspects of the warrior way of Elbaf's warrior culture that does have some merit, such as I think their pride as warriors and all that stuff. They don't need to be like those that just terrorize and stuff, but be warriors that protect people. I think if they can make it more like that, I think it's a good thing. But yeah, I think that's basically some aspects of it. But yeah. Also, they can't really let Elbaf become vulnerable to like the world government, which unfortunately we're seeing now in the current timeline. Let's see. But also, of course, that's because Howard and most of the guards have also been disposed of. So, yeah. And the one warrior is currently chained that can probably help fight them is chained up right now. So we get, aspects like that. But I do like how Harold thanks Ida for teaching him everything he knows and how he's become the man he is. So I do like the sort of like conversation that granted she's already dead by now, but I do like how we flash back, and granted if you missed that tombstone like I did, you can think this is a conversation that's happening now. But I'll admit, it's a very touching deathbed, if you will, where they talk about how Elbaf's changed for the better, and how she likes seeing and all that, and how talking about how he's getting rid of all the customs. But like I said a bit earlier, she does like the warrior's pride, and that there are aspects of your culture you should cherish. I mean, arguably you should see progress, but not like keep the stuff of your culture that that's positive and for the good, not like the more toxic aspects, which I can see why Howard, let's see, for example, for Howard, it's like some of the aspects of the culture prevented him from marrying her, which arguably you can probably see why that part of Elbaf's customs and culture was, bad. But of course, she points out Loki was able to be born, and she does view Loki as a Julian's like brother and like an extra son to her, regardless of what happened between his biological mother and all that stuff. So it is touching that you do see this. So yeah, I think that is positive. But I do like how you see how Hadrid and how Howard was trying to just so much try and get Ida to be his proper wife. So yeah. But I do like how she's like fine with how, let's see, their relationship turned out, but and all that stuff. So but I do like how just as she's dying, they're talking about going back on their adventures one last time, just like the old days, having fun and all that stuff. But it's like they probably both know deep down that it's not going to happen. So I think it's rather touching. They just talk of something more positives. It's arguably in terms of death, this is a more slow and quiet one, not the sort of dramatic shooting dead, stab deaths, that or explosive deaths that you sometimes see in One Piece. It's more of like quiet die of illness one, which arguably you do see sometimes, like Usopp's mother. But yeah, but I do think Ida, let's see, has done it. But I do think people will remember Ida just because, at least amongst the fandom of One Piece, at the very least, for the way that she's had not only such a positive effect on Howard, but also how how caring of a person she was in regards to like Loki, if you will, who's becoming arguably one of the new favorite characters for One Piece, new favorite for many One Piece fans. So yeah. Anyway, I do like seeing the grief that you have of Howard walking out, Edgerton coming to cry for his mother's death, as well as Mato, and even Loki doing a nod with their hat thing, which we saw one of the CP0 agents do with another one in Wano, if you will, probably realizing that, oh, Ida has now died and all that stuff. But yeah. I do also find it interesting that apparently Shanks went missing after, completing a mission. He was going to, left just before he was going to be promoted to a God's Knight after completing his last mission. So it seems like either Shanks had basically learned all he needed to and used his last mission to escape, or just as he's getting information, he realized he was about to become a full-on God's Knight and realized what that meant, so he left. But arguably, it might be a mix of both, to be honest. He got the information he needed from the Holy Land, and now that he knows that, and now he knows what he knows, he can leave. But also probably realizing that, okay, at this rate, I've become a full-on God's Knight, and the consequences of that. So he's left. So yeah, which of course has led the position to be filled with like how to take his spot, which we know he was more than willing to accept it. So we do see. So it's confirmed that Howard was at one point a full-on God's Knight, not just a God's Steel. And this probably does full-on explain why the other God's Knights seem to be quite familiar with him and all that stuff. Like, oh, you're paying tribute to Howard and all that stuff. But yeah. But I do like how, the five elders are sort of, seemingly telling Howard that you're about to change Elbaf's history forever, with what you're doing now and all that stuff. Further manipulating him and all that stuff. But I do find it interesting that Howard was planning to step down as king of the Giants when he's become a God's Knight and Elbaf has fully become a member nation, thinking that someone more younger and pure would be better in. Now, I don't know if that means he was planning to have Loki, Julian, or someone else take the throne. I mean, he's a bit unclear about that, if I had to guess. Maybe it would be one of his sons, but who knows? It depends if there's any other Elbaf noble or royalty out there. But that would be my guess. But granted, I don't want to spoil what happens in the next chapter, so I'm not going to say that. But it's interesting how you've got like St. Peter looking around. It's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And of course, Moo comes in and says that's up to him to decide, which I will admit, it's interesting to learn that Howard actually now has. We learned that Howard actually met Emu. Granted, we knew that Rox knew about Emu beforehand, but Yeah, this definitely confirmed that Rox never told Harold about Emu, which even though many people for many of us, we knew about Emu, and it's like what Harold's doing is definitely going to lead to his downfall with Emu. But granted, Rox probably could have told Harold about Emu, but he didn't. So he's only now finding out, and at this point, he doesn't really know what kind of monster Emu actually is. So he's more than willing to serve, and even become a God's Knight, which is interesting to learn that apparently once you become a God's Knight, you get more extra power. So, which will lead to some debates like how strong would God's Knights be if they did not have their power? As far as we can tell, the average God's Knight seems to be at least Yonko commander level, with maybe the commanders possibly being either Admiral or Yonko level. Granted, we know that Garling, got beaten by Rox, which means that Garling was probably, at least at the time of God Valley, either Admiral level or below, but not say Yonko or Pirate King level. But now as he's become a 5 Elder, he's probably maybe Yonko level to maybe even above that. But let's see what they remember. Now, granted, I am curious to see if Elder's going to show something that will put Garling back in a more positive light. But for now, let's see, he is, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, at the moment, Harold has now become immortal and stronger as a result. But even the 5 Elders thinking just how terrifying he is. So at this point, it's very possible that Harold, at this moment, at least in this part of the flashback, is probably the second strongest living individual in the world at the moment. Let's see, probably even stronger than Whitebeard, probably stronger than Kaido or Big Mom. Yeah, maybe even stronger than Garp, if possibly. Though granted, let's see, Whitebeard and Garp might be declining due to their old age at this point. But yeah, it's very possible that Harold is probably stronger than all the Elders, maybe Garling, at this moment as a God's Knight. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Let's see more on what kind of strength Garling will have as a member, as a 5 Elder. But yeah. But I do like how Harold thinks that, okay, it's Emu talking about how you're now a member of the God's Knight, and now you've one last mission. You've done it. You've got the world. You can have Elbaf join the world government, which I do like how he's just willing to celebrate and toast with his citizens, but does not yet, of course, realize what Emu's pretending to do. So, but yeah, I do like how at first is wait, hold on, what do you mean? Could you repeat what you just said? As at first he doesn't believe it, but of course Mu is as we probably suspected, Emu wanted the entire nation of giants as warriors. He doesn't want to see them all. I do like how Howard's just trying to protest at first, saying, hold on, I thought this sort of agreement was I just be your tool to use, and for anyone else, for the giants, just have them, willingly volunteer as Navy soldiers, which I think that was what it's clearly, arguably, is arguably what really the ideal situation. But of course, he's only now just realizing that, let's see, no, the ones at the top never wanted that. Ideally, if it was say, Sengoku or Garp or the other member nations of the world government, arguably they probably would have preferred that option. Harold has a seat amongst the kings and all that stuff, while giants are more willing to join as Navy soldiers. But no, Mu wants the full giant country to become an army of slaves. So it's basically the complete opposite of what Howard's been fighting for. And even though he tries to protest, it's just me having the burden. It's he's now. I do like how he's now realizing that, okay, Emu never really wanted, let's see, Elbaf to join as a regular member state. They just wanted an army of slaves, if you will. And at this point, I do like how he's trying his best to prevent himself, but we see that due to Emu's contract, God's Knights will move against their will. So it seems confirming that Emu can probably possess any member of the Gods Knight or any member of the Five Elders, not just Gunko and not just like Saint Saturn. So basically, if Emu requires it, he will possess them. If I had to guess, more likely the reason why we've seen Gunko possessed in the modern timeline is that she's starting to show signs of rebellion, since she's starting to remember things of her backstory, which I'm curious to see how that will play out. But yeah. Anyway, I do like how even Howard at this point realizes that there's no stopping him, orders his guards to chain him and also to call his sons and Jarl, as he knows they're probably the only ones in Elbaf right now that can have any hope of stopping him. But of course, Hadrudin, we learned that the reason why Hadrudin was never in the castle, he's out away in some sailing thing, which arguably new giant warrior pirates situation, which prevents him from learning the truth, which arguably might have helped but avoided Loki's current situation of and all that stuff. But it's clear at this point that he's probably going to order Loki and Giles try and kill him, and as a result, prevent him from making Elbaf into an army of slaves under Emu's orders and all that stuff. But unfortunately, things go a bit awry, and Loki, probably from what we can tell, willingly took the blame. At least that's what I'm assuming from what we're seeing. But nevertheless, we are now finally at the Fritzy bit where we're finally reaching the point where we saw at the beginning of this flashback with Loki first talking about the story. So yeah, I am really excited to see how that goes down and all that stuff. Overall, I have to give this chapter probably an 8.5 out of 10. I think it was arguably the highlight is seeing the progress of Giant's opinions with the public at large in the world being more positive. Let's see that touching moment of Howard on Ida's deathbed. Let's see having sweet moments, but also having moments with Sol and Ida talk about, are you sure you want to give up all the culture stuff of Elbaf? Well, Howard's he wants to get rid of it all, showing that while Howard has made some progress, he shouldn't really try and get rid of everything. But let's see, as there are some positive aspects of Elbaf's culture. Learning that Shanks had left the Gods Knights just before he became a full-on member, and that allowed Howard to take over. Let's see, Howard meeting Mu giving him his full-on God Knights thing, and learning that actually increases the strength of the Gods Knights. Learning that Emu wanted Howard to make an army of giants of everyone. Howard protesting, and then him being forced. So as a result, he's forced to have his guards and then his sons, and then Zhao try and come and stop him. So yeah, we've now got basically the full context of what happened on that day, or at least what's likely to happen to the day. We just now have to see it being executed and played out. Some other answers. So yeah, arguably a very good chapter. And that's all I have to say. For those who end up listening to what I had to say, I hope you enjoyed what I had. But for now, I am Blue Starsaber signing off. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.